Now, the Kia Carnival remains the best choice within the large MPV segment to us, simply because it offers the best powertrain, the best specifications, and the most usable and flexible interior package. Now, for 2024, this car has been upgraded, so there have been some revisions to the specification and an improvement in its active safety systems. But more importantly, this 7-seater is the flagship of the Kia Carnival lineup, and it still remains the best choice if you're looking for an MPV to haul your family or to be chauffeured in. Don't believe me? We'll get into the review. My name is Ayman Abdullah. This is Malaysian Motoring. This is our review of the 2024 Kia Carnival 7-seater. Now, for 2024, there have been no revisions to the front end, which is probably a good thing because this is still a very good-looking MPV. You get this enormous chrome grille with these lovely pins all the way across, designed in such a way that it curves inwards to create this very shark nose type face, and you still have the tiger nose grille design effect where it pinches in the middle, something that Kias have been sporting since the late 2000s. Now, the thing about the Kia Carnival is I think that its lighting setup is perhaps one of the most distinctive aspects of the whole car, because you have the split headlights here where you have the main beam here and the high beam sit within the grille itself, and you have this very distinctive LED daytime running light which also doubles up as the indicators. Down there you get some LED fog lights which are very, very bright and very useful when you need them. But overall, this front end not only looks sharp and well designed, but on top of that it has an air of SUV about it, which is exactly what Kia wanted. That SUV-like style extends onto the side, which we have said before makes the Carnival easily one of the best looking MPVs out there, simply because it manages to hide its heft pretty well for something this big. Now, it does have an extremely long wheelbase which pays dividends inside, but talking about the wheelbase, that leads us onto the wheels, because as part of the 2024 update, we now get updated alloy wheels. These are now 19-inch alloy wheels, which are an inch bigger than they were before, and they are done up in full gloss black, which if you get a black Carnival, looks pretty good. If you're wondering what that might look like, you can check out our review of the Kia Carnival 8-seater. Now, these wheels are now wrapped in Goodyear Assurance Max Guard 4 tires, which are an SUV grade tire, which perhaps feeds into this car's SUV pretensions, but more importantly, they provide adequate performance for something that is ultimately this powerful and this heavy, but is also surprisingly quiet and pliant, which is also good in terms of ride. Now, as standard, the Kia Carnival comes with electric doors on either side, replete with buttons here, buttons on the B pillar to close them, as well as buttons next to the driver in order to allow more access and easier usability. Now, of course, this being the 7-seater, you get 2 seats in here, but I'm getting ahead of myself because back here, where you'll find this full LED light bar, which is again part of that LED light signature which I really like about the Carnival and generally about Kias overall. The only problem I have back here is twofold. One, despite these wonderful LEDs and as far as LED technology has progressed, for some reason Kia's decided to put the indicators on the bumper. I absolutely cannot stand that. It's a genuine safety hazard because if there's a vehicle behind you in traffic, they might not be able to see you indicate, and for a more contextual use, on the LDP, you're trying to change lanes, bikes are not going to see that immediately because they'll assume that the indicators are up here. This has happened to me more often than I can count. The other issue is the fact that this enormous barn door means that obviously you cannot back your car up too close to a wall behind you, because you always have to pay attention to just how far this door opens so that you don't accidentally hit a wall. Mercifully, there is a 360-degree camera with guidelines, so it's not that hard, but it's just something worth bearing in mind. Now, behind the barn door, which doubles up as an awning if it rains, you have an absolute cavernous amount of space. Now, the Carnival is built off of a unibody structure, which means the chassis is an integral part of the structure of the vehicle. Now, the reason I bring that up is because it means that the overall floor of the vehicle is much lower. The benefit of that is that this third row can be folded into the floor, creating a completely flat load bay. And more importantly, when the seats are up, it it creates this enormous well where the seats used to be, which can be used obviously to put luggage and so on. Which means that even if you do have 7 passengers in here, a full family for a full road trip, you will have more than enough room for all of your luggage. I can attest to this because I've taken an 8-seater on a family holiday with 7 people on board and all of their luggage, and believe me, none of us know how to pack. There is plenty of space in here. Now, obviously this tailgate is electric, and it also comes with the proximity feature where if you stand close enough with the key for about 5 seconds or so, the car will blink and then the door will open. This is obviously very useful if you have hands full of luggage or groceries or whatever. But more importantly, when the door is closed, you can see at the back end of this car is nice and clean, aided of course by the hidden wiper back there. Bet you didn't think that was there. Inside is also where you'll see one of the biggest changes for the 2024 model year, and that is in terms of the upholstery color. When the Kia Carnival first arrived in Malaysia, it had this lovely tan and black leather interior, which I think made it look very upmarket and very premium. However, because Malaysians are a very boring bunch, BERMAZ has decided to answer the demands of their customers and offer a full black leather interior, which they have. And so the seats are all done up in black, but mercifully there is at least this lovely lighter grey, for example here on the center armrest, as well as on the lower dashboard and on the door cards themselves, so at least it doesn't feel and look too monotonous. Now, aside from that, specification in here remains broadly the same. You get a couple of powered seats up front with ventilation and heating. You also get a boss switch here for the front passenger should you want to move this seat out of the way without asking them to do it, or if nobody is in here. You get these lovely dual 12.3-inch infotainment screens, which are not only very easy to use and very snappy and very responsive, but they also come with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for this center screen here, which complements obviously the wireless charger that lives down here. USB ports are very well catered for. There's 3 up front, there's 1 each on the backs of the front seats. In here you find nothing, but there is a lot of space, and there's also space for a couple of cup holders, a touch and go holder that I use here, huge door bins big enough to fit a large bottle, as well as a relatively large glove box here, which should be big enough to hold the service book. Now, in terms of other specifications, you also get a Bose audio system for both the 8-seater and of course this 7-seater, which I must admit sounds absolutely fantastic. And of course on the 7 and 8-seater you also get twin sunroofs, one here in the front and one in the back. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there have been some spec revisions for the 2024 model year in order to accommodate for the ADAS upgrade without increasing price. Now, 2 features have been removed from this particular 7-seater, and that is the ambient lighting system, which used to live on the door cards, and though honestly they were pretty much useless, so the removal of those is not really a big deal. The bigger factor to me is the fact they've also removed memory functionality for the driver's seat. Now, the 8 and 7-seater both used to have 2-stage memory for the driver's seat, but now it is gone, which means that if you share this car with a spouse, for example, if you have multiple drivers, then that might be a point of contention. Now, aside from that, everything in here still feels and looks really good. You've got lovely soft touch material up here on the doors. You still get a stitched leather dash top up here. You still get this lovely brushed aluminium trim, replete with this sort of lovely funky geometric pattern which we saw on the D-pillar garnish. And of course, you still get the rotary gear selector here, which although some people complain isn't very practical, to me, it's been very easy to get used to, and I still think this is the best way to go about it. It's certainly better than having a traditional gear lever because it takes up less space. And of course, because this is a modern Kia, you get plenty of touch-sensitive buttons up front, and you get physical buttons down here, all of which give you direct access to the functions that you need most, which is the best way to go about things. Oh yeah, there's also buttons here on the steering wheel to do similar functions, and you get a couple of paddle shifters to manipulate the 8-speed automatic gearbox, which you'll never use. Now, because this is the 7-seater, you get a couple of captain's chairs back here, which have electric adjustment as well as lovely armrests. Now, the party piece of the 7-seater over the 8-seater is the premium relaxion function. Now, what that does is it essentially moves this seat to what Kia calls a zero gravity position. And once in place, as you can see, the backrest is electrically adjustable. There is also an electric ottoman which deploys from here, allowing you to get very comfortable indeed. If you like a demonstration of how this works out on the road, you can check out our older Kia Carnival 7-seater review. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this easily makes it one of the most comfortable ways to travel. However, there are limitations to this system. In order to use the premium relaxion function, which is usable via these buttons specifically to do that on the side, on the inner side of these seats, they need to be pushed inwards manually, and there cannot be anyone in the third row, because if the vehicle detects weight or a seatbelt in the back, it will not recline like this for safety reasons, of course. The other issue that I have with this is the fact that even though the backrest is electrically adjustable, and so is the ottoman, which is also available on this side, unfortunately, if I want to slide the seats backwards and forwards, I still have to put in some manual labor, which, as most of you will know, I'm generally averse to. Now, that said, being sat back here, you will enjoy things like heated and ventilated second row seats, which means, again, being sat back here allows maximum comfort. You also get blinds here on the second row, as well as your own sunroof, which means you can have all the light or none of the light. That's entirely up to you. And because this is obviously a premium MPV, you also get 3-zone climate control, one for the front passenger, one for the driver, and one for the rear half of the cabin, manipulatable via the controls panel up here. Although personally, I just set the temperature and leave it in auto. Now, if you're not using this seat like this for maximum comfort and recline angle, there is obviously a third row. You can push these seats outwards, leaving a large space here in the middle, which means you don't need to fold these seats away. You can just clamber into the back, which is really not that hard, sunroof or otherwise. Now, the gap that you're looking through right now is what happens when you push the second row as far forward as possible and then try to fold the seat forward electrically. And as you can see, it just makes more sense to clamber through the middle. Now, the benefit of having a 3-row MPV like this over, say, an SUV is obviously the space back here, because this third row is designed for actual adult human beings to use, rather than the 2 extra jump seats that you get in 3-row SUVs usually. Now, being sat back here with this seat set up in a reasonable enough position for the second row passenger, I still have a good amount of knee room and a good amount of headroom, despite that openable sunroof taking up head space. And of course, there are 3 3-point seat belts back here, with the middle one set here up in the middle. Now, being sat back here, as I mentioned earlier, I am quite comfortable. There is plenty of recline angle in the seats. Should I want to, say, take a nap, I can lie down like this, or if I'd like to be at attention, I can pull this a little bit further up. On top of that, I have 2 cup holders on this side. There's 2 more on that side. There are also sort of like loose cubby areas for more storage. You also get your own speaker here, your own aircon vent up here on the ceiling, your own USB port, one on here, one on this side and one on that side. And I even get my own sun blinds, so that over a longer journey, I don't burn back here, although that's not really too big of a concern because all BERMAZ vehicle comes as standard with tint. And on top of that, for maximum flexibility, in addition to the ISOFIX mounts in the second row, there are also 2 ISOFIX mounts here on the third row. This means that you can have 2 children sat back here, or you can have 1 child in either row with a parent or a minder sat back here, which means that, again, this car is very practical. Although I will argue that if you're looking for a Carnival for family use, it'd probably be better suited in the 8-seater rather than the 7. Now, I have mentioned several times in this video so far that there has been an update to this car's active safety features, but in order to demonstrate that, we have to get out on the road. What hasn't been changed for 2024 is the powertrain. Up front, you'll still find a 2.2-litre turbo diesel SmartStream D engine, which produces just shy of 200 horsepower and so much torque that with your foot to the floor, this car will burn its front wheels. Now, all of that power is sent again to the front wheels via an 8-speed automatic gearbox. All of this is very similar to what we saw from the Kia Carnival when it first launched. No changes there because none were necessary. And in terms of the overall usability of this engine, it still remains one of the best pairings for a large MPV like this, simply because with the amount of performance on offer, it means the engine never really has to work that hard in order to move the mass of this vehicle. The Carnival is not a light car, and so any sort of petrol engine would struggle somewhat in order to move this thing in any degree of haste. That is the benefit, obviously, of diesels, that and the fantastic fuel economy, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, in terms of, again, the daily usability, this engine is remarkably smooth. It's only on startup and at idle when you feel a little bit of diesel rattle, but we are talking very, very minimal indeed. And of course, if you're willing to put up with that, the benefit is when you put your foot down, the car picks up and goes. Sure, the engine note is a little bit gruff, but progress is very smooth because I'm already doing about 80 kilometers an hour, which is all I really need to do. Now, the other benefit of this, as I mentioned earlier, is the fuel economy. Now, we've had this car for about 6 or 7 days, to which we've been consuming an average of about 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers. That is remarkably impressive for something this big and this powerful. If you were to compare this to, say, a V6 Toyota Alphard Velfire, you'll be struggling to get anything less than about 12 to 13 liters per 100 kilometers on petrol. And so again, this is where the diesel powertrain really pays benefit. But I think beyond town use, the huge upshot with a diesel motor is in terms of motorway cruising, because overtaking in this car is absolutely effortless thanks to the masses of torque available very down low. You're never struggling to find a little bit of extra twist either to get up a hill or to overtake on the motorway. And again, because of that torque, the engine speed remains nice and low, so it never feels too clattery or too intrusive into the cabin. This is an amazingly serene vehicle to travel in, and it's certainly something that I would do again, having done so before. But of course, beyond that, there is also the question of NVH, because some of you may argue that this is ultimately a cathedral on wheels, and with all of this leather upholstery, all that sound is going to end up reverberating through the cabin. That is not true, because despite the Kia Carnival not coming with, say, acoustic glass on the side windows, it remains very comfortable in here. Kia has been very smart about how they've worked the aerodynamics into this car, between the air breathers in the front bumper that help smooth air over the front wheels, as well as the reprofiled side mirrors in order to, again, improve aerodynamics and reduce overall wind turbulence. It means that this cabin remains very muted even when you travel far north of the national speed limit. And then, of course, when you're talking about a family car, naturally there is a question of safety, which in terms of this car highlights active safety. So in terms of passive safety, the Kia Carnival has a standard 5-star NCAP rating, because in terms of crash safety, this car is very rigid indeed, and it does sort of disperse all of those crash forces evenly throughout the chassis. But in terms of active safety, the Kia Carnival comes absolutely chock full. Both the 8 and 7-seater come with adaptive cruise control, with autonomous emergency braking, pedestrian and cyclist detection. It comes with automatic high beam, blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert. You also get things like pedal misoperation alert, traffic jam assist, which means the car can drive itself all the way to a halt and then pick itself back up again should it need to. And of course, for the 2024 model year, you also get the lane watch cameras. Now, I do not recall quite what Kia calls it, because lane watch is a Honda system, but ultimately if you were to indicate left or right, it uses the 360-degree cameras that are in the wing mirrors to show you a feed of what is on either your left or right lane right in the instrument binnacle. As a result, it means that you absolutely will not ever miss anything in your blind spot. This is again very helpful because, as I mentioned earlier, when you're on the LDP and you're trying to change lanes, and even though you've indicated there may be a belligerent idiot on a bike, at least you'll be able to see the belligerent idiot before you make the maneuver, and in fact even before the blind spot monitoring goes off. Although if you were to continue with that maneuver, the car will also warn you that there is a vehicle approaching and therefore the maneuver is not safe. Now, I've talked quite a bit about the active safety in the Kia Carnival, but the reason for that is because this is, again, a family car. For something like this, where its primary use will be shuttling the family to and from appointments and school events and whatever else, you need something that will look after you as well as your brood. And I do believe the Kia Carnival is perfectly specified to do just that. It is comfortable, it is practical, it is decently frugal, and of course it is very, very safe. I would expect or demand nothing less than what the Kia Carnival offers if I were to have a family and then shuttle them about. But on top of that, in top of peace of mind for the driver when you're out on the open road, buying a Kia under BERMAZ today also means peace of mind in terms of ownership, because the Kia Carnival, like many other BERMAZ products, comes with a 5-year warranty as well as 5 years of free servicing, including parts and labor, which means that is 5 years of absolute worry-free ownership. On top of that, BERMAZ offers its own helpline, which means that should you ever find yourself in a difficult situation and you need assistance, BERMAZ is there to help you, in addition to, of course, your own insurance company. So when you put all of that together, I really do believe the Kia Carnival is a truly unbeatable package. This car is upmarket, it's refined, it's frugal and reliable, it is incredibly spacious and amazingly practical to use. This is a car that is not difficult to drive around in town, and it feels absolutely planted out on the motorway. It's a fantastic machine, this. Sure, it's not going to set your heart on fire in terms of driving dynamics, but please point me in the direction of an MPV that does. And if you are the sort of person where you actually need to utilize all 3 rows on a regular basis, it truly doesn't get much better than this. However, if you're looking for a large MPV like this that will be doing the majority of its duties in town and will most likely serve as a chauffeur-driven vehicle, then might I suggest taking a look at the Maxus MIFA 9, or it could be the MIFA 9. So far I haven't gotten any clarification on the matter, simply because that offers the same amount of space, the same amount of practicality, and broadly the same amount of luxury and premium appeal while running a full electric powertrain. Because ultimately, if you're going to be stuck in town, if you're doing town sort of chores at town speed, an electric powertrain will easily be more efficient and also far more refined. And of course, if you're boring and your primary concern is to ensure that your neighbors know that you're making money, then I suppose just get a Velfire. But if you actually want the best MPV in the segment, and more importantly, one that offers true versatility in terms of being able to go anywhere at any time without having to worry about charging, then this is the car for you. Because on a full tank, this car will well exceed 1,000 kilometers, which means KL, Penang, driving around Penang and back on a single tank. And with all those safety features I mentioned earlier and the comfort and refinement that this car offers, I can't imagine a better way to shuttle 7 to 8 people around. In any case, that has been our review of the 2024 Kia Carnival 7-seater. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to be notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and you can join our new WhatsApp group. All of that is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and jangan bodoh.